Great, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and good evening, probably also in some parts of the audience already. Welcome to this session on result-based financing in the energy sector, or the energy access sector. My name is Marcel Raats. I work for RVO, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. Within that organization, which is an implementing agency for the Dutch government, I'm the team manager for energy and climate in the Department of International Development. At the same time, I'm also, together with my counterpart Daniel Busche at GIZ in Germany, coordinating the Global Energizing Development Program. A program closely also linked to the theme of today, a program where we were approached in 2012 already by the UK, by DFID, if we would be able and willing to pioneer energy access through result-based financing in the energy sector. For us new, an endeavor, and particularly I think the colleagues at GIZ have gone through a very steep learning curve at the beginning of this program, which is actually is continuing until now. We established a separate facility within the program with two purposes actually. One was to put RBF in the energy sector to the test. Is it an instrument? And now we know probably the answer much better than we did in those days. Is it an instrument that can boost markets, that can bring energy markets to the next level, that can help private companies and investors to expand their businesses into new regions, expand and innovate new business models? And the other purpose was a dedicated learning agenda. For that purpose, we also set up a portfolio that was really diverse in terms of technologies, in terms of countries, in terms of implementing organization approaches, incentives, and indicators. And I think towards the end of that separate facility in NDEF, my conclusion is definitely that yes, RBF is a really good instrument also for the energy access sector, and is, as far as I'm concerned, an instrument that's becoming an integral part of the toolbox. And I'm really happy, and I know I've said this many times over the last years, I'm really happy and excited to see that we are considering RBF. We're past the pilot stage now. RBF is really getting traction in the sector, and is excited to see that both public and private actors have embraced the instrument and the philosophy that's behind that instrument, although there's still a lot of learning to be done yet. But on the other hand, we see that there's a multitude now of new initiatives, new programs, which are based on result-based financing, and where everybody is looking towards and say, well, how can I become part of that instrument? How can I be part of that program? Not only in NDEF, we're continuing with RBF as an instrument. Also, my own organization, RVO, on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, has put out the global facility on RBF, the SDG7 results facility. And I'm particularly happy that we have 3 panelists today who have been part of that early movement on RBF, and have taken a lot of lessons and have put that lessons into programs that are now either have recently started, or being expanded from their original pilot stage, or are coming massively into the market based on a lot of research and a lot of piloting programs beforehand. So I would like to briefly introduce, or I actually would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves very briefly, 2-3 sentences. After that, we would move over to some introductory comments by these 3 panelists, providing a little bit of background on where they're coming from, what their experience is in the sector, how their programs, their activities, what they look like. And after that, I would like to delve into a panel discussion with some questions also from my hand to the panelists. And I would actually like to move as quickly as possible into a Q&A session with the audience as well. For that reason, you can use the chat box or the Q&A box in Zoom. Bring in your questions as early as possible. We will have a look at them, or the organization behind the webinar will have a look at them, forward them to me, and I will put them forward to the panelists. We've got about an hour from now, so that's not too much time. So without further ado, I would like to ask Yabei, Hannah and Ash to subsequently introduce themselves with only 2-3 sentences before we move over to the first speaker. Yabei, could you start off, please?
Hi, thank you, Marcel. Hi, everyone. My name is Yabei Zhang. I'm Senior Energy Specialist at SMAP, the World Bank. I'm currently leading the Clean Cooking Fund, which was launched last year during the climate summit. So look forward to more discussions and interactions with many of you. Back to you, Marcel.
Thanks, Yabei. If you don't mind, Ash, ladies first. Hannah, could you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Wanjiru. I work for SNV, Netherlands Development Organization, Kenya. We are the fund managers for the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project called KOSAP, and I'll be talking more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, and welcome to the session. Ash, last but not least, could you please introduce yourselves and the experience that you meanwhile have with RBF very briefly? Ash, are you there?
Oh, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Hi.
Sorry. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. My name is Ash Sharma. I'm a special advisor with the Nordic Environment Finance Corporation, which is an IFI owned by the Nordic countries, and we are the fund manager. I'm the program lead for the Beyond the Grid Fund for Africa, which is an RBF program running in 5 countries currently, and primarily with electricity, but also moving into clean cooking shortly, we hope. So I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ash, and also welcome to the panel. Yabei, may I ask you to provide us with some backgrounds and some introductory remarks on where the World Bank and particularly SMAP with the Clean Cooking Fund is coming from, where you are now, and but also with an eye to the audience that we have today, is how do you exactly envisage the match between, in the design, the match between public and private interests? Because both parties in this RBF contracts have their own intention, and how do we ensure that this match has been made to the benefit of both parties? And I think the organization should put up some slides, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Can we have some my slides up? So basically, I mean, as a part introduction, I want to share our thoughts, why we set up the Clean Cooking Fund and what its intent to be. So next slide. So the reason we set up for the Clean Cooking Fund is really try to address 2 interlinked barriers in the clean cooking sector. One is lack of political commitment, and second is lack of investment. So by leveraging the World Bank and other multilateral development banks finance and attract private sector investment in the clean cooking sector. So we provide this co-financing in a way of incentive to the government to allocate finance to the clean cooking sector. And second, to catalyze technology and business innovations by providing incentive for players across clean cooking value chains. And third, to link incentive payments with verified results at the output, outcome, and impact levels. So here it's really the key part of the RBF. So we have a funding target of 500 million over the next 5 years to catalyze another 2 billion in investment, public and private sector, to help to reach 200 million people with clean cooking solutions. Through the Clean Cooking Fund operations, we hope to support a sizable stream of business along the supply chain, delivering clean cooking solutions, and also to develop an impact bond market for the clean cooking sector by attracting a broader range of funding. And through the replication and scaling up, and we aim to accelerate the progress toward universal access to cooking. Next slide, please. So a Clean Cooking Fund have 2 pillars. So one is really this investment pillar using RBF as the main approach. And second pillar is to help knowledge, innovation, and the policy coordination. And the essence of the CCF grants, so CCF provide grants to countries. The essence of this grant is to support market development toward long-term sustainability. So the current public benefits of the climate, health, and gender from clean cooking are not priced or internalized by the users or the private suppliers. That's why we see it's under-delivered currently. And the CCF grant will correct this market failure by monetizing these public co-benefits using the RBF approach. The RBF incentive will act as a revenue source to attract upfront private investment funding for the project developers. So the private investments can be crowded in to help to accelerate market adoption. And in the midterm, we expect this approach can be integrated by the government programs, especially the social support programs. And over the longer term, as the economy of scale to reduce the cost of delivery and the higher penetration of clean cooking solutions, and also increased affordability by consumers, we can expect a self-sustaining market. So that's basically the theory of change behind of the Clean Cooking Fund. Next slide. I would like to share some basic general RBF design principles. So again, that it's more from the Clean Cooking Fund level, it's a program level, and we give a lot of flexibility at the country level. So number one is flexibility and adaptability. The detailed design should be driven by the country context and specific objectives. We know the RBF can be used wisely, and if you use it wisely, to tackle some specific challenges or objectives. And the key RBF parameters, such as the incentive amount and the payment triggers, should be consulted with the key stakeholders during the design phase. And during the implementation, they should be reviewed and adjusted periodically in response to the market conditions. Second, the CCF is technology agnostic with focus on performance. So in general, we say that we support tier 3 or above solutions, or at least 2 tiers above the established baseline, which means that if the country prevalent baseline is 0, like 3-stone cooking practice, we can help the tier 2 solutions, but with a transition plan to move the solution up to tier 3 and above. And third, to complement by other measures. So recognizing that RBF is not a panacea, it needs to be complemented by supporting enabling environment and access to finance. And fourth, results can be defined at the output, outcome, and impact levels, and at the Clean Cooking Fund program level, we do track all those level of results. And finally, that we recommend that RBF to build on the experience from the upgraded solar sector and leverage the existing institutional delivery and verification structure. So many of you know that the upgraded solar sector is much more advanced in many countries compared to the cooking sector. So we need to building on those experience and also including infrastructure. Next slide. So now I want to share some experience, early experience from RWANDA during our preparation. As many of you know that, hopefully you know that the RWANDA Energy Access and the Quality Improvement Project is the first Clean Cooking Fund co-financed project, and which was approved by World Bank in September. And it includes 20 million clean cooking operation, 10 million from Clean Cooking Fund as a grant, and 10 million from our World Bank IDA credit. It is the largest clean cooking operation in Africa. Among the 20 million, 17 million allocated for RBF component, managed by the RWANDA Development Bank, BRD. Another 3 million is used for technical assistance, mainly to support in labor environment, managed by EDCL under RWANDA Energy Group. And this clean cooking component is fully integrated with a great solar operation, so with the same institutional setup. And this RBF is designed pro poor. What does it mean? So RBF incentive levels is linked to the income categories. If you're familiar with RWANDA context, it has already established the social income categories, UBDEHI, ranging from tier 1, category 1, 2, 3, 4. The highest is pretty much middle or upper income level, where category 1 is the poorest households. So because it's already established its income, this structure, we're able to basically creating RBF incentives by income categories. And it means that lowest income categories, they can get highest RBF incentives, up to 90%. And the highest, the category 4 is not eligible for RBF incentives in this case. And RBF incentive also linked to the technical performance. I think that many of you know this tier, from tier 0 to up to tier 5. As I mentioned earlier, in the case of RWANDA, we open to tier 2 as in initial years as a transition solution, and will provide technical assistance to help the local producers to move up their technical solution to tier 3 and above. And RBF incentives really aim to fill in the affordability gap. So you can consider that payment is help to partially help consumers to pay their share of the market price of the product. And under this operation, we really work across different sectors and with development partners to take an integrated approach. For example, we work with our environment colleagues, recently helped to set up a stove testing lab. We work with social protection team. As I mentioned, that the idea is eventually this subsidy scheme can be integrated into the social protection program. And also behavior science team that just recently completed a study on the behavior change in the sector, and all those information will be available to private players as a market intelligence. And also work with many other partners to take really because to build a sector is really need a lot of support from different angles and utilize the advantage from different partners. And we're also discussing with our carbon finance unit, we will likely provide additional finance to purchase the carbon credits generated from this project. And by having additional revenue from carbon finance, those additional funding can be used to provide more solutions to consumers. So basically that's the overview, and here's a link about this project. The project appraisal document has more detailed information about the project design, and some very detailed arrangements still need to be confirmed, and we hope to launch this RBF program soon, by early next year. Let me stop here. Back to you, Marcel.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Yabei, for this clear introduction. I'm always excited when I read about the Clean Cooking Fund or learn about the Clean Cooking Fund, how it is leveraging the interest of governments to really do something on the clean cooking agenda now, with both not only with grant help but also with IDA loans, and combining that. As far as your call for enabling environment measures, for supporting measures, working together with others. also on using RBF partially to buy down the cost of the products. That for me, but that's something we can come back to in the discussion later on, is something which is more typical for the clean cooking sphere and a bit less for the electrification sphere, where you see that the need for enabling conditions, or for need for enabling measures, is depending on the state of development of the sector. At least that's the I would say the experience that we have in NDEF, and where you also enter more into a discussion whether it's needed to buy down the price of the products in order to be able to reach the customers. But that's something that we might come back to in the discussion later on. So thanks for this this first overview of the Clean Cooking Fund. May I invite now Hannah to give a bit of an insight in the KOSAP clean cooking activities, an RBF, which is, if I'm not mistaken, also taking quite some lessons into account already that we made in Kenya when we developed clean cooking RBF for under NDEF as well. And I'm really curious to see how that has evolved in this new program, KOSAP, where you, if I'm not mistaken, already had a first round of projects and negotiations with private entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Marcel, for that. And I'm going to take this moment and run briefly through some of the lessons learned. We have learned from the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access project. This is an initiative by the government of Kenya with support from World Bank, and SNV and Sanfanda are the facilities manager from the Kenya office and supported by Globally. When we go to our first slide, we can go to our first slide. And the specific objectives of the clean cooking solutions are resource-based financing. There's unique challenges we are trying to address is to establish a sustainable supply chain, and especially in counties that we call underserved. We are talking about the counties that are in the northern part of Kenya. They are characterized by, they have very few people in these areas. The poverty levels are very high. So we also find issues with to do with infrastructure. So you find these markets have their unique set of opportunities and also the challenges. So the facility aims to facilitate the sale of 150,000 clean cooking solutions between 2018 and 2023. Where the program is set up into two phases. So Route 1 is under implementation. We have a target of 60,000 units, and we have it's ongoing with 10 companies on board. And we have also a Route 2, which is coming around February, March next year, and we have a sales target of 90,000 units. Going to the next slide, I just want to show you where these counties are located. So the northern part of Kenya, areas like Turkana, Marsabit, these are areas where previous projects on Clean Cook Stove may have been done using different approaches, but we are testing the market-based approach through the RBF, and also the counties in the northern, in the coast region of Kenya. Going to the next slide. How is KOSAP Clean Cooking Solutions facility incentive design? So KOSAP is the CCS facility is not purely RBF because we have a combination of a challenge fund and also now the result-based financing. The challenge fund comes in form of a market entry, and it's meant to support private sector to be able to handle some of the supply chain aspects or challenges in these areas. And we are saying that this challenge fund is available so that a company can create market awareness in some of these counties. You can be able to train new sales agents within your team who can even speak local language and meeting some of the operation costs. The challenge fund is also available for a company to be able to buy a bit of an inventory, especially for establishing in these new markets. You need to recruit a new stockist. You don't have the stock within your store, but you can buy. But once you have bought this stock, that particular stock is not eligible for RBF. Then the next one is on the ex post, and these ones you paid once the verifier have actually confirmed that you have sold the product. Currently, for this particular phase, we are paying 37% of the market price. So if your stuff is going for $50, once we have confirmed you have sold, you get 37% of that. Some of the conditions in our next slide. So we have the incentive conditions is that you as the private sector should contribute 25% of the investment you're proposing to do in these particular counties, because the ex-ante only covers 75%. Another condition is that the product need to be sold at the market price. So this is tricky because you find in most of the places, maybe the household will expect a subsidized product, but the product have to be sold in a market price, because we are testing a market-based approach. How are communities willing to adopt to buy a stuff that goes for X amount of money? And also the cook stuff sale must happen in that particular county. That's when you get paid. In the next slide. So this is just a snapshot of the current technologies we have for round one. We have tier 2 stoves for firewood, and we also have tier 3 and above stoves that are using the charcoal. So in the next round in future, we have plans to expand to other forms of energy. In the next slide. This is just a quick snapshot of the process flow, how we do so we have the first one, we start with the request for proposals, then we evaluate the business models. So within the capacity you have as a private sector, are you able to meet some of the challenges that are in those counties? Are you able to sell? Do you have the capacity? Do you have some partners you can work with within those counties so that you're able to deliver the kind of targets that you're setting? Then we undertake the due diligence. Then from there you are awarded. Then from there we go to contracting. And once you have you as a private sector on board, we'll introduce you to all the processes, the reporting. Then from there we give you the ex-ante. This is the market entry fund to help you just start up the market. Then from there we have the reporting schedule where you report on a monthly basis. Then we go to verification, and eventually we give you the ex-post payments. In the next slide. So currently I mentioned we have 10 companies that we are working with. It's good to mention that we have a good mix of the manufacturers, distributors, and also the financial institutions. So we have a mix of local and also the international companies. So according to what KOSAP we are offering, at least so long as you have what it takes, so even if you're a small company, you're a big company, you have an opportunity for you to be able to access the funds. And we are going up to December 22 for the last sale, so that by June 2023, which is the end of the project, we should be able to have paid all out the ex-post amount. In our last slide, we'll be sharing quickly about some of the lessons we have learned. We had a strong response from the market. When we sent out the call for proposal, we had 26 companies responding. However, I've mentioned we ended up with 10. And some of the challenges we noted from the private sector is some of the companies sending in their proposals late after the deadline, or not even attaching some of the documents that we requested for. So it's also very critical as the private sector continue applying for the funds, that at least we are able to read in between the line and supply the information that's available. And also, we also noted initially we had a deadline of 1 month for the private sector to apply. We noted this was seemed quite short, and we were able to include. So when you're sending out a call for proposal, just ensure as in the LBF you have enough time so that the private sector can be able to look out for the partners. Another one is the sales target quite being unrealistic, very, very high, but after the negotiation, we were able to see. So as a private sector, you should ensure the kind of the targets that you're planning should be very realistic. Given some of these areas are quite challenging, just have something that you can be able to deliver. And the last lesson learned is that we received very few companies coming from the subnational level, and we are saying these are at a country level. So, and we have set up some mechanism just to ensure that in future we have subnational level enterprises joining, and this forming a collaboration framework that we have in the website, just to ensure that you can go to the website. If you are a distributor, you can be able to see a last mile distributor. So these are the key lessons we have seen as a KOSAP. We are on track. We have started our sales. Of course, we had some challenges with COVID, but now we are on track. And we are hoping that coming in the next round, we'll be able to see more and more private sector coming on board to help us achieve the target, especially in these counties which are quite dry. They also have some challenges with their energy access. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Most interesting. It's also interesting to see that the approach that KOSAP is taking in Kenya is a bit different than the one that Yabei just explained for Rwanda, where you are following a purely market-based approach and actually forbidding participating companies to subsidize their products. It's in the design of the Rwanda project to, and of course, staggered into income levels of population to definitely buy down the cost of the products, which shows that RBF is also highly contextual, and you can tweak it according to design. What I also took from your presentation is that, and that's my own experience as well, RBF is not as easy to explain as it looks like, as it immediately appears. There's need for intense discussion between participants, between companies and incentive providers at the beginning of the process, not only in the design, but also after the initial call has gone out, in order to make companies aware of what is expected of them, what are the risks that they are taking, and what also are the opportunities in the program. So thank you very much for that. We'll come back to that in the discussion as well. So maybe last, Ash, could I invite you to shed some light and give us some of your experiences in Zambia, and also maybe the preparations on the larger program Beyond the Grid?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so thanks once again to the organizers for inviting us to share our sort of perspective. So the Beyond the Grid Fund for Africa is building, as you indicated, is building on the initial pilot, which was Beyond the Grid Fund for Zambia. This is a program that was launched 3 years ago, which is working in the sort of off-grid electricity sector. Although one of the projects that's been contracted under that is an advanced cooking stove. So the idea was really to try and scale up very quickly some of the companies that were working in Zambia, and to attract new companies to Zambia. So this has been very successful. It was instigated by Sweden, and it's run together with REAP as the technical advisor there. And that program has been very successful. It's reached almost 200,000 connections, almost 1 million beneficiaries within 3 years. And I think the standing start, really, I mean, it was, I think, 20,000 units in the country at the time of starting. So Sweden has sought to try and replicate that, to scale that up, and they invited us at NEFCO to do that. And we're carrying that program forward to 5 countries. So we're doing another round. Currently, we have a round open now. We're evaluating projects in Zambia, in Liberia, and Burkina Faso. So they include mini grids, solar home systems as well. So that's the sort of history that we had, and I think some of the lessons that we can bring to this activity, as I say, in the broader sort of SDG 7 space, and I'll come on to cooking in a moment. But really to say that, first of all, the financial incentives really, I think it was mentioned by Yabei also, that financial incentives are really only part of the story. And I think particularly when you have got very immature markets, as Zambia was then, and as some of the West African markets are now, I think it's important to recognize that there is a need for institutional capacity building and support. Also support, I would say, to the private sector. And I think it's important there to work with companies. We've got a range of companies from local firms up to sort of multinational organizations who are, I guess, the sort of household names in this business. So I think it's important to know that technical assistance is critical, and the work of the institutional groups, the so-called off-grid task forces will be very key. For example, in working with the customs and excise people to bring down tariffs and provide VAT exemptions and so forth. So really taking a sort of whole of government type of approach has been very key and very important and worked very well in Zambia. I think the importance of the portfolio effect, I think that's also important. I think where funds are being set up, it's important to have a number of different companies there. And of course, you'll see that some will underperform, others will overperform. So you need to have some flexibility in the contracts and how you can address that. And here I would like to experiment, and we're looking to use the opportunities of the experience that we've had for many years, 15 plus years of working in the carbon market, where there are very flexible contract structures which can allow you, for instance, using call options and other contract structures to buy in more development outcomes. So I think that's something that we would like to look at, but also to look at ways of utilizing capital better. So you're not tying up the funding in companies which are under-delivering or underperforming, but to be able to use that opportunity to, as I say, to get connections and development outcomes elsewhere. So we're hoping to do that. So I think we've kind of learned that I think, as you indicated, that RBF is really becoming a very important part of the toolkit. I think there's a lot of benefits for the private sector companies. I think there's a number of lessons that we've learned there, is that it can be used to promote higher tier access. So we're working now also with mini grids and trying to encourage use of productive use and try to incentivize that. And there's a number of ways in which you can do that. We also look at ways of differentiating our offer so that we can appeal not only to those, as I mentioned, international type of organizations who've got a lot of experience and who are really looking to scale up quickly, rapidly, and to bring them into sort of rural areas, but also to support local companies. And here, I guess we'll have some more discussion about that, because this is not an easy thing to do. We try and have separate windows, for example, for the technologies, but also to try and differentiate a little bit in terms of the types of organizations, to try and offer a level playing field, but also to provide additional support, more TA, for example, for certain aspects for those companies. I think we've also seen that there's been an opportunity to increase the behaviors of the private sector and to bring in, for example, new technologies and new business practices and business models, trying to move people into the pay-as-you-go area, which I think is something, of course, which is of interest to us when we move now with our clean cooking program, which we're just trialing at the moment. So we have a feasibility study ongoing for that. But in order to address things like the affordability gap for some of these higher tier products, for example, we've seen in certain parts of Africa the use of advanced pellets and bioethanol and so forth. But these are expensive, and there is an affordability issue there, particularly for the rural poor. And I think here we have to be a bit more flexible in terms of how we address those issues, and how we can bring, for example, if we're looking at LPG or briquettes or these higher tier cleaner burning fuels, how can we make the project economics stack up? They need better infrastructure, they need better distribution, they possibly need much more support. And here I think RBF can play an important role as being an enabler in this regard. What more to say? I think as indicated, RBF is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all the problems of the financing in this sector, particularly with regard to clean cooking. It's been said before many times that this sector lags behind investment in the electricity space, the off-grid electricity space, but there are so many commonalities there that it's a very intriguing business opportunity, I think, for a lot of enterprises. And also, how can we work to bring some of the synergies between the technologies together? We do have some examples of hybrids and companies which are active, for example, with clean cooking and electricity, and how can we marry those two issues? So maybe I'll stop there. I have some more comments. I think we can probably take those in the question and answer session. But I think certainly we're looking to try and see how we can deliver RBF in a very efficient way, try and provide greater clarity and rules for the private sector. But also we as a fund manager have to be very cautious about how we manage, with the fiduciary responsibility that we have, how we manage these funds, and how we can, whilst on the one hand keep transaction costs low and trying to get as much of the financial incentive to the private sector as possible, but also focusing on key issues like monitoring and evaluation and learning. So a very important aspect of our work is to make sure that we learn and how we use these learnings to improve our offer each time, but at the same time try and get sustainable businesses running. And maybe that's my last point, is that we don't support projects, we don't support programs of projects. We're really trying to support businesses that can be there for the long run, sustainably financed businesses, which will move into, for example, in the electricity space. We're trying to get them into the rural areas. Some great work there from KOSAP, I noted, really to work in underserved counties, and how we can do that by mobilizing, attracting, and sustaining financially sustainable businesses. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ash. And I see some comments coming in the Q&A box. I would like to encourage you all to leave your questions here. Maybe even if we're running out of time, we're not able to answer them directly here, we can do that after the webinar, even be bilateral. A lot of recognizable comments from your speech, Ash. I would say predictability would also be an important feature for private companies entering into an RBF scheme. And we can talk about if you're not delivering results as agreed, then we keep ourselves, we have some flexibility on the donor side to reduce your contract or to, but at the same time you also take away the funding horizon of that company. Then you need to be really careful about that.
For the unit responsible for
what I was wondering, that maybe my first question, and then we might even already integrate questions from the audience. My question, and I also took that from the presentation of Hannah, where you say, well, how do we involve subnational organizations or companies, or the more localized companies, into the RBF schemes, as they're usually less equipped and less experienced to deal with the requirements that RBF is putting before them than the more international oriented companies. And does that not lead to, well, exactly not a level playing field between the more advanced companies and the local companies that are part of that agenda as well? What is the experiences that you see, or what are the safeguards that you would see there? I'm posing this question to each of or to any of the panelists. How can we assure that this level playing field is still there for everyone?
Hello, can I attempt that?
Yes, please do, Anna.
Yes, one of the things we are doing as KOSAP, just to ensure like some of the enterprises at the county level are able to participate, is to ensure we have shared the information about the facility. We invite them for pre-application meetings. So we find these meetings are very important because you are able to clarify like all the aspects, what are the do's and don'ts when you're making the application. Another thing we have done is to create a collaboration page, whereby when you log into the page and maybe you're a last mile distributor based somewhere in Turkana, you can be able to see who are the available distributors or manufacturers in that platform. Not forgetting building more capacity on them, and also encouraging the partnerships. just ensuring like a manufacturer somewhere is able to link up with you who is based in the county. Of course, we find they may not have the capacity as an international company, but combining all these mechanisms can really help a company based at a county level to be able to reach to a point where they are able to benefit from this facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any of the other panelists want to provide a comment on that?
Should I come in, Marcel?
Sure, Yabei, please.
Yeah, I think that there's always a question that for any government, they would want to support local producers, local products. Always a tension, right? Even the tariff, always one of the first dialogue we were having with the government, it's okay, can we provide a level play field for all companies, right? In terms of tariff setting. I think that's often the key question, okay, to review the policy regulatory environment to provide that equal access to the market. That's number. Second is that, we have to recognize we want to help the local producers because they will stay there. They will stay for the market. And if they are successful, it will more likely this market will be sustainable. So for international companies, it's better to partner with the local distributors or retailers. For local producers, in the context of RWANDA project, we provide technical assistance targeted to the local producers and really also work with the development partners, for example, GIZ, NDEF, EU. They already have a complementary program ongoing to help the local producers to move up their product performance and the quality of production, because sometimes it's also, again, the consistency of quality product and the overall management system, business management. Another element is that we, under RWANDA, we also set up the innovation grant that's also under the technical assistant subcomponent. That particular aim for the local producers, local entrepreneurs, in terms of provide additional non-RBF grant to them. So they can gain either technical, sometimes it's a matter of technology transfer, knowledge transfer, and building the basis of the business. Yeah.
Thank you, Yabei. Let's go directly to the chat box. There's a question on which we would like to take from Jan Kloine, saying that it's about coordination. We see that there are now multiple RBF activities popping up in different countries. There's also carbon finance coming in. How can we assure, and I'm sure we won't have a definitive answer on that, but how can we assure the alignment between these different initiatives and avoid double counting?
I can come in to provide our experience,
yes,
because
please.
we're working with our carbon finance unit. So number one, that in terms of eligibility criteria, if the company already gets carbon finance from another program, so it's excluded, it's not eligible. So I think for many other RBF programs, that is in terms of eligibility criteria, as a clear definition what companies are eligible. So you cannot sell the carbon twice. And then second, how we work with our carbon finance, because in the end that they will purchase the carbon credits generated from the clean cooking interventions can only sell once. So the way we did that, okay, because the clean cooking fund RBF is fairly flexible. In a way, we provide several triggers. Some include more upstream. Carbon finance only to the downstream verified carbon, and then you get disbursement, very little advance payment. And I think that's a challenge of many companies have faced. And in fact, some companies failed because they were not able to wait long enough to get the carbon finance. So as I will discuss with our company, basically clean cooking fund like take the risks. So we provide more upfront RBF, and once generated the carbon credits will purchase by the carbon finance, and that additional carbon finance will rolling back to the program. So then we'll be enable more of access, provide this upstream RBF to more customers. Yeah.
Thanks, Yabei. Maybe I mean, one of the ideas behind the RBF is that companies, by entering into an RBF, are de-risk in going into, let's say, more difficult areas, new market areas, or involve in or roll out new, more risky business models. It's also expected that through RBF they will be able to attract easier additional commercial finance. It's by private investors being able to use the RBF contract as a leverage or as an incentive to get commercial financiers on board, also in terms of pre-financing. Could you maybe elaborate, maybe Ash or Hannah, on your experiences on that? So are private companies, when entering an RBF scheme, indeed more easily accepted by private financiers?
Hello, Marcel?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that I guess this is a design question as well. You know, what we tried to do is to design the program so it meets the sort of the public policy objectives, let's say, of the donors. You know, the donors, for example, in Sweden, for example, has been very keen to promote deep rural access. And that way you have to sort of design the programs and your incentive structures accordingly. And I think that's by and large, I think it's shown to have worked quite well. I mean, we've seen quite good levels of interest. We have a current call out now, as I mentioned, in Zambia, Burkina Faso, and Liberia. And in each of those countries, we are 5 times oversubscribed in terms of the amount of funding that we can offer. So we're getting a lot of interest. So we're seeing that commercial actors are interested in RBF, and we've also seen from the experience in Zambia that each euro of RBF attracts at least 3 more of own financing. The ratio is closer to 4 actually. So we're hoping to keep those sort of leveraging ratios quite high, and of course it works best if you can bring private capital in as well, of course. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're looking very much at design of the schemes to try and promote certain objectives, particularly working with underserved areas. But I think when we go into the sort of higher tiers for clean cooking, then I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that affordability is an issue, and to what extent, at what point do you trade off having the sorts of subsidies that are being talked about to make them viable in the long term? Because of course, when those subsidies disappear, when the program finishes, are the companies going to stay in those underserved areas? And that's why I mentioned earlier on, I think it's important to build sustainable businesses, because it's likely that once a business has set up its supply chain, set up its depots in rural areas, that they will probably stay there, because that's become a sunk cost for them.
Yeah, but that's the I would say the more general perspective, that if you go for a fully market-based approach and you don't buy down don't subsidize the price of the end products too much, then you have a temporary investment barrier that you have to overcome. Setting up the distribution system in new areas, rolling out this market approach. It's a bit different in my view when we look at RBS, where the product price is heavily incentivized, and there's the risk of, when national governments do not take it over and do not engage too much into it, that at the end of the road there's a market that is expecting lower prices than is justified by the production costs. So there's definitely a risk. Let's go to the chat box and see if there are any questions came in. The question from Peter to Yabei. In Rwanda, Yabei, how are you getting input from manufacturers and distributors to ensure that the 20 million is allocated sensibly? I would translate that question, if you allow, Peter, into how are the eventual participants in the RBF, how have they been involved in the design process of the facility? I hope that's okay.
Yeah. So eventually, if your RBF is when we have a call for clean cooking companies, it will be a company who responds to the program requirement, right? It can be a manufacturer, can be a distributor. I mean, in the early pilot in Indonesia, we call it market aggregator. So it's up to you to figure out your business models, your partnerships, and then respond to the program. So you may decide, okay, who's your manufacturer, who's distributor, but you are one who going to meet all the eligible criteria and to submit the sales report or the customer information. And then you will receive. And then based on your internal partnership, you can allocate. I think at the program level, we will not in the position to best to mandate what would be best allocation of the different partners, what the share of RBF you will receive.
Yeah. But I think the question also relates to the sometimes with let's say cumbersome procedures that come along with RBF, and in itself, it's RBF is quite simple, but when it then comes down to implementation, and I've had experience myself as well, there's quite a lot of safeguards that you still want to introduce as a donor. So it comes with how do you ensure that financing cycles align, that verification processes are manageable by private companies, that the administration that's involved also with RBF, which is not typically what you have in your usual doing business as a company. How do we ensure that these extra questions, these extra burdens that you ask from a company, that they're in line with what they can absorb? Is there a discussion between and also how the incentive level is set? I mean, that also not based only on market assessment, also on discussions with the company. So I think the question was, how is in the design phase, what is your exchange with private companies?
I think it's a very good question, and I probably do not have perfect answer because it's all we are even within the team, we have constant debates, okay, how you allocate across the results chain, because there's always this risks and reward, and how you, I mean, in terms also allocation between the private risk and the government risks, right? So it's really like you think about the game theory. Okay, I want you to be more successful, but what if you are not successful and I allocate more funding at the upstream output, and then I'm bearing more risks of not achieving either climate or other impact level results. So it's really a balance. So that's why we emphasize in terms of this flexibility. It's good while we design, we do have a consultation to collect information from different stakeholders. I mean, sometimes it's good to let the public players to say, oh, it is a concern by the private sector, upfront finance, the risks involved, understand, in a way to increase the mutual understanding. But in the end, someone had to make a decision. Okay, let's have the first year to see how it works. So that's why we say it need to be periodic review. If the first year to say, okay, this allocation does not really bring in private sector investments, then we need to adjust. And always, I think it's hard to get the first stroke perfectly, but I mean, to building that iteration is also important to adjust. And if there's a lot of, I mean, for example, that Ash, you mentioned the interest so high, it's like 5 times of your program funding. Maybe it's time to lower the incentives and to let companies to involve.
Yeah, is that the same iteration process that's going on also in Beyond the Grid and also in KOSAP, Ash and Hannah? If you, for instance, setting the level of incentive, I noticed in Hannah's presentation that the incentive level is 37% of the product price at the moment. I'll be curious to see how is that established, and was that based on a discussion with the sector, or is that something that is well, let's say fixed for now, and then let's see what appetite that it brings and how we adjust it after a couple of years. So where is the exact interaction with private companies, with private entrepreneurs in the design phase, but also, let's say, during implementation, how you readjust your design? What is the feedback that you get from companies?
Thank you. For the KOSAP project, the 37% of the market price was arrived at after a lengthy consultation with the private sector, looking at all the prices of the cook stove, interaction with the private sector, especially for them mentioning this is my the cost of production. This is the margin I make if I was to go to any of the target region, and we are talking 500 kilometers from Nairobi. So this is how much it will cost me. So out of that, and in combination with some of the experiences that the fund manager have, so we are able to arrive at that. So far, we haven't had any complaint about the market price, maybe perhaps even too high. But also, I had mentioned we have an opportunity where the company has a market entry kind of funds. Talking about maybe going forward, if this can be reviewed, I could say yes, because we have an opportunity for the second round, and also given some of the prices are changing. Like for instance, when the project was designed, the cook stoves in Kenya were not attracting the value-added tax VAT. Last year, this was introduced. That means then the market price is going to go up. So it remains a dynamic market, and we don't want to be rigid. So we also have to incorporate what's really happening in the sector.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. How did that interaction go in Zambia or in Beyond the Grid, Ash, with companies? What were their main, maybe in the beginning, what were their main feedbacks on the design? Just to see where the biggest learning has taken place in the early implementation of the program.
I guess that we always get some feedback from the whenever we run these competitions in different areas as well. We as I say, we worked a lot with the carbon markets. The feedback, typically we go out to the market through a call for proposals, and that way the idea is to have a wide range of actors that can bid in to harness the use of the market, also to try and encourage some, let's say, some innovation from the private sector in what they do. So you open it up to a wider group, and you don't put too many limitations or restrictions on certain aspects of the offer. But in terms of pricing, I guess that's mainly your main question. But in terms of pricing, we do try and put that out to the market. We have a certain amount of funds available. We do give indications based on our consultations that we've undertaken in the marketplace on the sort of ticket size that we hope to support, and we try to communicate that level of information. And as I said, we've had a number of there are 4 projects in the pilot program in the BGFZ. We hope to contribute around 15 to 20 in this round in the 3 countries where we are working now, and we're very keen to have a feedback loop in terms of pricing, and also to follow up with these companies. So we have a fairly good level of interaction with those companies. We're talking to them through our implementing agent very frequently, supporting them, particularly as has been the case in the COVID situation. It's very important to be close to those companies and to see how the money is being spent as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Ash. Meanwhile, I'm seeing we're running over time. I know there's another session starting at 6:30, which is in 7 minutes from now. So I would like to stop here. Thank you very much for all your participation. Thank you very much for the panelists, Yabei and Hannah and Ash. Most interesting. And I think the last words on RBF hasn't been spoken yet. I think that there's still a lot of variation in the market. Although there's a lot of traction and the pilot phase is behind us, I still think we need to learn, and we can learn a lot before we have maybe not a silver bullet, but something that hopefully will come close to that. So with that, thank you very much for your participation. I'd like to close the session now. Goodbye.
Thank you.